Hey, hello there. This is Ben with Studio on the Lake. Hey, this is a fun video. It's about I just found this set on eBay, Brookstone set of 6 tools, and they look just like my original carving tools. And I'll finish the rest of the story as this goes along. But they're a vintage set, and going back in history, my wife is the one who bought me the first set of carving tools, and it was these, and I think a knife based on my father-in-law, who is a recreational wood carver, does some pretty cool stuff. But this was 35, 40 years ago when she bought these. I first went in the military and came down. So I didn't know that it was a Brookstone set because, as you know, if you follow the channel and are subscribed, I take the finish off the handles. I will not take the finish off of these handles. I'll leave them with Brookstone. But this is the original set of carving tools that I started off with, doing little things like gnomes and whatnot. And this is them coming out of the box. So what I like about them is this is a gouge. And somewhere along the lines of a number 8 if you were to buy a big one. And really only 3 tools, maybe 4 out of the 6 would I use. And I'll tell you that I certainly would use that medium gouge. It's real helpful. I use these like a pencil, and here's a smaller gouge, which really comes in handy. You don't need a mallet. You can pound these with your hands, which I'll show you later on. But this is a cool set, and I'm going to initially start off with them unsharpened. You can see they've had some use on them. They've been sharpened a little bit. A couple of the ferrules are loose. That's a simple matter to fix. But there's a straight skew and then a veiner or a V gouge. And if you follow the channel and are subscribed, you know that I don't like the veiners because they're hard to sharpen, and I find it easier to do with just a knife. But here's the last 2, and the one on the right is a bent skew. These 3 right here, one is bent and is straight, and it's good for doing flats. The other one is not bent on the handle. And then this one has an angle skew, and this one you can use like a knife. So of these 2 that I'm putting back right now, the two skews, I probably don't use those a whole lot. You can get these sets. I've bought a few in the past. Here's one that comes from Footprint. They look the same, but they're not. Here's a little higher dollar one, and I believe this is some sculpture thing. You get these for 40 to 50 bucks. Hey, surprise, guess what? Just before an hour before I left, my sprocket came in. It has 8, it fits the chain. I was halfway to here. My wife texted me and said, I'm in Iowa, and said, hey, your bandsaw has been delivered. It's in a crate. It's sitting on the deck out back. So my sprocket's here, my bandsaw's here. So here's the larger of the 2 gouges. Like I said, that's equivalent of maybe a number 8. And you see how I'm using this like a pencil? This is unsharpened, and it's not quite as sharp as it ought to be, but it still does work. The next one I pull out of this set of 6 is going to be the smaller one. But there's the Footprint. If you're looking at a bunch of gouges on a sheet of paper, and that they give you that profile. So there's the 2 profiles. This works really good for small stuff. And like I said, it doesn't. This smaller one, if you're having trouble pushing through some of the wood, this small one does a nice job. I like to work with gouges because it leaves kind of a polished patina. You don't have to sand it. And I'm just farting around with a scrap piece of basswood. So those of you with basswood envy, eat your heart out. There's the V gouge, and this one was surprisingly sharp. These are a little more difficult to sharpen because you always end up with a tang at the bottom of it if you're not really careful, and you need some slipstones to sharpen that. So let's see how these turn out. We've got the 2 diamond strops. There are slicks, I guess, are better appropriate, and they don't require any. There's ones that extra fine. You can see I scratched that on them, and the other ones are fine. I forget the grit on these, but this is my sharpening system. I'll go from the fine to the extra fine, and then over to a leather strop. And you can see my old leather strop still is a little damaged from the fire. I think I'm going to leave it that way just to remind me. So on these diamond strops, and this is real time, First, I flattened the inside of it out, and you see those slicks have different curvatures and stuff on there, and you can see the black or the iron on there on the ones I normally use. I love these for chisels because they can get the exact contour that I'm looking for. And I'm just using light pressure on these. It's a diamond slick. I haven't ever worn any of these out. I suppose you'll wear them out eventually because it's just a piece of metal that has a diamond coating on it. But this is real time on the sharpening, and then I'll go from that to the extra fine, and then finally over there with that's a white, and I forget each of the rouge or triple E that's on the leather strap. It doesn't really matter which one you use of the 3 or 4 different, but this is probably a white sharpening compound. It has a lot of wax in it. You can see on there the white, and then after I start working with it. So here's the interesting part. I did not know that the original carving set were Brookstones. And my wife, I was talking, she saw them, she said, "Oh, that's your original set that I bought you back in the early 80s. And I was like, wow, that's really weird. I didn't know the name of them because I had taken the handles and the finish off so they didn't slip around in my hand. And she said, yeah, I got them from either a Neiman Marcus catalog or a Hammacher Schlemmer catalog or one of those high-dollar mail-order catalogs that my mother had or used to get when I was a kid and then on and through. Well, as you know, nowadays, those catalogs are all out of business. So if you think about it, the days before Amazon, we had your standards, which were for all household goods, and Sears and Roebuck, Montgomery Ward, we used to call them Monkey Ward, J.C. Penney, those were all gone. But then you'd get these catalogs that said, that were Hammacher Schlemmer, or Hammacher Schlemmer in Deutsch and German, Neiman Marcus, those of you old enough, Eaton's, Archie McPhee, any of these ringing a bell? Nordstrom's, Marshall Fields, Spiegel, and one that's still around, those are all gone, primarily. Remember L.L. Bean used to be a catalog company up in Maine. Now they're mainstream. And then the big one of all, if you fly around, remember they used to have the Sky Mall. It would have cool things in there. All these specialty catalogs had cool things in them that you looked at it and you said, wow, a watch that projects stars on the ceiling. I got to have that. And they were trying to suck you in. Well, that's where she bought these carving tools, and what she bought were Brookstone. And Brookstone only sold through the specialty catalogs. They're out of business now, but they made different tools, and they made a pretty high quality tool. These the steel in them is just about right. It's not too hard, not too soft, kind of like the 3 Little Bears. They sharpen real well. They hold an edge very nicely, and I'm just tickled pink that I was able to find these things. And I'm going to show you a little bit of what I'm doing with these. I would be tempted to take the finish off the handle, but since this is a neat set, and I did not know where the wife got them from when she first gave them to me many years ago, and I do not know, didn't have the history on it, but when she saw them, she immediately knew what they were and where they came from, and that's kind of interesting. All these years of carving, all these years of talking to my wife and her being around carving is kind of funny. I never knew this story. So here they are sharpened, and you can see that I'm just using these like a pencil, and that's why I like them. I grew up using these. I think this, like I said, when she bought the first carving set, and I did little things. The first thing I did was a wizard about 8 inches tall. I think I paid $25 or $30 for a 3 by 3 by 8 piece of basswood, and basswood hasn't changed in price since then. And I did a very blocky, straight up wizard with a staff and his finger pointing out at you. And then I progressed on with little scrap pieces of basswood and different kinds of wood, and went to things like simple gnomes, and these were all with a chisel and a knife. And these are the chisels that I used initially. So here's the big one. This is probably my favorite. And this is kind of fun to do when you're carving with these chisels. And you'll see that in a minute on a little bird silhouette that I'm working, but it's very peaceful. You take off one slice, you set it up, and you set up another slice, and it just kind of works through. So, and here's a technique that I developed using my hand as a hammer. It's very light, and of course I could use a stop block, as you can see on the back of that stump. That thing wouldn't slide around so much. But this is how I developed using the little mini rubber hammers. I didn't like mallets because they seem to tear up the back of the chisel, the wood on the chisel, and you have to eventually replace that. But a little rubber mallet you get from the hardware store, I'd cut the handle off. So here's my knife I stropped up, and this is some silhouette type birds that I'm using. My daughter's house is called the Canary House. Each of the houses on the lakes up here in northern Wisconsin, a lot of them have some kind of a history. They came from the 30s. Obviously, this house is yellow. Up in the eaves on the house are little bird cutouts. They kind of look like the, I call them country yucco. So they're the ones that do the bear silhouettes, the Yeti silhouette and plywood, Granny with her bloomers bent over in the garden, that sort of thing. And I'm not a real big fan of those. It's country, I guess, for lack of better reference, country craft. And I wanted to, we redid one of her porches, which had a flat roof, and put a pitched roof on it, which matches the rest of the Canary House. And you like those socks, Jordy? So I got to make, I don't know, pick a number. Let me count. Probably 18 of these, because they're also on the shutters. So there's a lot of them. And this one I'm just doing to show to my daughter and see if she likes it and approves of it. And then we'll go back and get the other one. So that is not a piece of basswood. That is a piece of a pine. And that's cut out without the bandsaw. I did it with a jigsaw. And I just wanted to see what I could come up with this. And at the same time, it's a good way to show you, if you don't have power carving tools and you're not sure you want to get into power carving tools and spend $300, $500, $800 for that sort of stuff, you can spend $50 for a set of chisels. And if you're interested in purchasing those, let me know, and I can tell you where to get those chisels. Or you can even buy expensive chisels. You can get a set for $50, or you can buy individuals for $30 or $40 a piece. But I can tell you the numbers that match what I'm doing. So I'm using the knife here, and I'll show you that skew a little bit later on the wing profile. And in the beginning carving world, or in the anything, this is a stop cut. So what I'm doing is outlining this. I'm severing the fibers. I'm putting a line down in the wood, for lack of better reference. And then I'm going to come back with the chisel and cut to that line. When it hits that line, it tends to stop. So hence the name stop cut. So here's the larger of the two chisels. And this is kind of the way, and you see how I'm not really using a lot of pressure. I'm using this like a pencil. And this just takes the little sections off, and it's very relaxing to do this. And you can see that I could have done this with a knife, but look how easy the chisel is to do this. You'll learn about grain, and this is low relief carving, for lack of better reference. If you were to do a sign plaque, which I owe you, I have about 3 or 4 videos still that I need to crank out. The bandsaw is in, and I will be doing getting ready to do the Raven, and I do have the chainsaw sprocket. I just need to change that sprocket and put the dime tip bar on the MS-193 still, and then I'll do the filming on that. But you can see, it's really light work, and it's actually a little bit better in some cases than a knife. You obviously could do a lot of this with a knife, but some things you can't. With a knife, it's hard to do a spoon because you're digging down in, doing the bowl. But with the gouge, you can do that whole spoon shtick. So here's those stop cuts again. And I'm really not putting a whole lot of pressure in this. I don't have a carving glove on, don't like them, but I'm staying away from my hand. Ironically, I was going to tell you, one of the fingers on my left hand has a little nick in it, and it's actually in this video. If you're bored, you can go back. And when I was stropping it, I pulled it off the strop and just kind of scratched the edge of my finger. So here's that skew I was talking about that comes in that might be useful. The two I would primarily use are those two gouges, and then probably this one if I only had three. So this acts just like a knife. I did sharpen this off camera, and it does a nice job because unlike a knife, you can get it down into the places, and the blade's only, what, 1/4 inch wide? But again, it's building stop cuts in there. And this is, you can do this in your living room, actually, if your wife will let you get away with it, or your husband. And the reason you can do that is these little chips just sweep up or vacuum up, even if you're on a rug. But I just love the lines when you're doing hand chisel work or knife work versus power carving. You get a real nice line. The back of the tool, away from the cutting edge, tends to burnish or polish. And you can see here, I'm putting a V in here, and I just keep coming at this from both sides and removing more chips. I'll do another video with this bird. I did this half profile, and then I went ahead and did a full bird just for the hell of it. I really don't want to make 18 of this stylized canary, I guess, because it is the canary house. It's yellow and that sort of thing. Like our lake property is called Broken Pine, and the reason for that is we have 300-year-old pine trees, and one that's out by the studio, the top, I don't know, 10 years ago, the top broke out of it. It's probably 120 feet tall, and the top broke out, and then it kind of filled back in, so you've got tall trees all around it, one that's 30 feet shorter than the rest, and it's recovering, but that's how the property ended up being named Broken Pine. We've got relatives south of us an hour, and their lake property is called Deer Point. These lake houses were all built in the 30s, maybe probably 20s and 30s, and then as a result, later on they've been built up. But you can see kind of the neat. There's a neat look about the chisel work, and you can see why I really like these small chisels. They remove quite a bit of material, just like I would do with that. But they came in the original box. I think that's what my wife recognized. They came in the blue box, and their advertising is antique Brookstone carving tools in the original blue box. So just a neat little short video until I can get back into the good stuff. And thanks a lot for watching. Subscribe for some more videos and all the good stuff. This has been Ben with Studio on the Lake.